Hey y'all, it's Kim. So I asked ChatGPT and Google if there were reports that Epstein faked his death or some group, entity, whatever you want to call it, faked his death. But Rolling Stone has this article and it just says, with Jeffrey Epstein's death, conspiracy theories have officially gone mainstream. It says after news of Epstein's suicide broke on Saturday morning, conspiracy theories proliferated online. But does this mark a turning point? And this is by E.J. Dixon, August 12th, 2019. So some of the stuff is old information. But I was curious just because I went through the timeline of Jeffrey Epstein up until his death because it was just the document that I found. And it was like with the psych consults or whatever with the psychologist. And they were pretty much saying that he felt like he had a lot to live for and everything else. He was almost like too afraid to die. His faith or his Jewish background, that's what it said in the document. I'm not saying that he was anyway a godly person, but anyway, it says Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell on Saturday morning, and the search for answers took over Twitter. And then, of course, Donald Trump, I mean, we know they were somehow friends. He was on the plane. That doesn't mean he did anything wrong. A lot of these people may not have done anything wrong, but who knows? Anyway, until we get actual information, I'm just going to keep digging. So, in the era of Trump, big tech, and the virulent spread of misinformation, it's hard not to feel like we're moving closer and closer toward a post truth dystopia where facts have officially taken a back seat to incendiary or politically divisive theory. Last Saturday, however, arguably marked a turning point in the evolution of fake news, a moment when the mainstreaming of misinformation sprang from mere hypothetical to verifiable reality. It all began in the early hours of Saturday morning when news broke that Jeffrey Epstein, the financier turned convicted sex offender who was arrested last month on sex trafficking charges, had been found dead in his cell in Metropolitan Correctional Center, or the MCC, a federal jail in New York City. Early reports from MCC indicated that he had died by suicide. To those following the case, the timing of Epstein's death, not to mention the circumstances surrounding it, was shocking, to say the least. A mere 3 weeks before his passing, Epstein had been rushed to the hospital following a reported suicide attempt, which led him to be placed on suicide watch and under close supervision by MCC guards. It was later reported that he was not on suicide watch at the time for reasons that still remain unclear, a fact that sparked outrage and intense suspicion. Perhaps even more to the point, Epstein's death came just a day after thousands of court documents from a previous lawsuit were released, thus implicating many famous and powerful men, including Prince Andrew, billionaire Glenn Dubin, and former Governor Bill Richardson. All three have denied any wrongdoing. Almost immediately, the social media misinformation machine went into overdrive. Among the usual suspects on the far right, most conspiracy theories centered around the fact that former President Bill Clinton, a former Epstein crony, had ordered a hit on Epstein in prison, dredging up a decades old conspiracy theory and causing terms like Clinton body count and arcanicide to trend. President Trump later endorsed this theory by retweeting a post by conspiracy theorist Terrence K. Williams, which said Jeffrey Epstein had information on Bill Clinton and now he's dead. Many on the left followed suit, accusing Trump of having orchestrated a hit on Epstein in prison, resulting in the Trump body count hashtag. One theory promoted by indie pop band Foster the People was that Epstein had faked his own death, tweeting New York Post photos of Epstein's corpse and comparing them to photos taken of the financier while he was alive. My guess is Epstein's on a private plane to somewhere in the Middle East getting prepped for plastic surgery right now, the account tweeted. What was so surprising about these conspiracy theories was not that they existed. Due to Epstein's wealth and high-powered social network, The financier and his little black book had served as conspiracy theory fodder for years, with Miami Herald's November 2018 investigation into the government's mishandling of his 2007 sexual abuse conviction, bringing it to the mainstream. What was difficult this weekend was who was promoting them. Public figures from Joe Scarborough to former Senator Claire McCaskill to Billions showrunner Brian Koppelman to Washington Post reporter Carol Leonig, who questioned the suicide narrative by tweeting the sources that described him as being in good spirits in recent days. That's exactly what I saw from that timeline before his death. Okay, it took their turn poking holes in the official narrative. Even economist Paul Krugman dabbled in some light conspiracy theorizing, tweeting, "If we were living in a paranoid fantasy universe, I would be very suspicious about the Epstein suicide, even about whether it was really suicide. And you know what? The Epstein case itself shows that we are kind of living in a paranoid fantasy universe." Yeah, but anyway, if one spent enough time on social media, it'd be fairly easy to conclude that the belief that Epstein would rather take his own life than face his accusers in court was actually something of a fringe position. It was a moment, really, of collective fictions being written. Joan Donovan, director of the Technology and Social Change or Task Research Project at Harvard's Shorenstein Center, tells Rolling Stone. People were participating in this discourse and adding different pieces to these theories and all these unprovable assertions. It was as if a friend later told me everyone who followed the deaths on social media was being radicalized at the same time. His death proving a testament to the power of bipartisanship in the most embarrassing possible way. It's like we're all being Jeff pilled, he said, a reference to red pilling, or the term men on the far right use to describe the process of their radicalization. Foster the people, promote Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy theory, and then Trump pushes conspiracy theory that Clinton was involved in Epstein's death. Oh boy. This is Paul Krugman. If we're living in a paranoid fantasy universe, I would be very suspicious about the Epstein suicide, even about whether it was really suicide. And you know what? The Epstein case itself shows that we are kind of living in a paranoid fantasy universe. And then Claire McCaskill, something stinks to high heaven. How does someone on suicide watch hang himself with no intervention? Impossible unless ... Anyway, though we know very little about the circumstances surrounding Epstein's death, it's undoubtedly true that the official narrative as it stands now poses a lot of unanswered questions. Reports that Epstein was no longer on suicide watch and that he was not being closely monitored by guards every 30 minutes as is standard procedure points to gross incompetence at best, as does the news that his cellmate had been removed after he was taken off suicide watch, a significant deviation from prison protocol. I was appalled, and indeed the whole departure was, and frankly angry to learn of the MCC's failure to adequately secure the prisoner. Attorney General William Barr said on Monday regarding MCC's handling of the situation. MCC has not responded to requests for comment because they don't want to get sued. In the absence of answers to these questions, there's ample room for people to draw their own conclusions about what happened to Epstein, says Jennifer Griegel. I don't know how you say that. Assistant professor of communications at the SI Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse University. Conspiracy theories take off anytime there's mass consensus around something or the inability to prove something easily. They say the lack of transparency surrounding federal penitentiary protocols, combined with the already immense media interest in the case and the timing of Epstein's death, created a perfect storm for conspiracy theories of all stripes. Twitter's amplification of the numerous Epstein-related conspiracy theories combined with the media's amplification of Twitter's amplification of the conspiracy theories perfected the conditions for chaos and misinformation to thrive. In addition to Trump body count and Clinton body count, Clinton crime family, Arkansas, they could have just said Arkansas. That would have been better, but whatever. Epstein-Murder, and even just Clinton's were trending at various times on Saturday. The fact that these hashtags were actively being featured in the platform's trending topics module basically ensured that millions of users eager for more information on a breaking news story would be fed false, incendiary, and arguably politically damaging information. The fact that users are incentivized to engage with hashtags to boost their own content only served to further disseminate that information. Twitter has previously said that it considers the newsworthiness of the content, or if it is in the public interest, when evaluating whether to feature a trending topic. Though, as Saturday's Disinformation World Cup proved, it often does whether the content is verifiably true or not. Of course, it's not particularly novel to note that in the absence of traditional gatekeepers, social media creates the ideal conditions for misinformation to thrive, nor is it a new observation that the platforms play a large role in boosting it. What made the Epstein case unique, however, was the sheer amount of unfounded speculation from people with massive platforms on all sides of the political spectrum, and even in some cases from those who have traditionally and correctly taken Trump to task for propagating conspiracy theories of his own. Whether you agree that someone like, say, Joe Scarborough deserves the label of gatekeeper or arbiter of truth, the fact remains that he has it, and while dipping a toe in the pool of baseless speculation is not the same as pulling a Trump and cannonballing right in. It is highly dispiriting, to say the least, to see them swimming in the same waters. It's tough to overstate just how deleterious, such rampant theorizing from high-profile sources is to the public conversation, says Donovan. While we can't discount the role bots may have played in promoting hashtags like Clinton body count, I personally think in moments like this, it doesn't necessarily require that kind of wedge application for this to become a very destabilizing issue because of the types of people participating in the discourse, she says. That applies doubly for journalists, even those who dabble in conspiratorial rhetoric without directly engaging in it. We're in this trust crisis with journalism itself already contributing to conspiracy making. Conspiracy making really tilts the scales further toward distrust of the media. Like, you can't hate them more. I'm just saying, platforms like Twitter are not perfect mirrors of the national discourse in that they distort and magnify pre-existing conversations that happen in real life, says Donovan. But it's also increasingly important to ignore the impact social media has on our lived realities, and it would be naive to pretend the ill-informed, hyper-politically charged conversations we have on the internet are totally distinct from those we have in real life. And in scrolling through my Twitter feed on Saturday, I had the distinct feeling that what I was watching was not just the churn of yet another news cycle dominated by sensationalist hot takes, though there was that, and yet another opportunity to take the platforms to task for not providing enough oversight, though there was that too. To be honest, it felt much bigger than that. What I thought I was seeing was both the beginning and the end, the beginning of an Epstein conspiracy theory industrial complex used as a political rallying cry. As Conspiracy of Lies author Anna Merlin wrote, but also more generally the end of an information ecosystem that at least faints at asking. I think there's probably saying feigns, but whatever, at asking questions before pretending to have the answers. I ran this by Grigel, whatever her name is, expecting her to dismiss it offhand. But what she told me, the rise of conspiracy theories actually might pretend was more horrifying than what I thought. 20 years from now, people are going to get so much exposure from thoughts and ideas from a multitude of sources, so their perception of reality will be more amorphous. They say it's just too much content, too many sources for us to all have the same lived experience in reality. Because conspiracy theories don't just alter the way we view the news cycle, they fundamentally alter the way we process information, and in so doing, change the way we view the world ourselves. So, they did mention about the faking of the death. Who knows at this point? Um, I've got a couple more videos that I want to do on this and then probably get off this topic, but we'll go back to some of the court cases because there's a lot of documents out there. But anyway, I will talk to y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.